Is it recording? There it goes. Okay, just got the notification. Perfect. Thank you, Maria and Phyllis. So like they mentioned, we are just going to recap. We know that many of you joined in the feedback sessions that we hosted a few months ago as we started to embark on this journey, and we wanted to circle back now with you that the feasibility has been completed on how that feedback was received, incorporated, and where we landed with the overall study. So some of the things that we'll cover today are who the participants were, synthesizing what we heard from all of those participants, and some of the core components that went into the feasibility study. So vision and objectives, the scope of the data system, priorities for what we need and how we want to go about implementing it, and some of the key benefits. And then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So setting the stage, just as a quick reminder of, why we wanted to complete this feasibility study in the first place. If the overall goal of DCYF, community-based pathways, of this partnership between DCYF and the community and tribal partners is to help families and children remain healthy, connected, and stable while also building the trust with those communities. One of the opportunities that we had or have to further that goal is to increase the support, our funding, and the sustainability of our community and tribal partners who are offering these culturally appropriate, relevant services that help keep children out of the formal system of care, right? And in order to do this, since this is a new partnership program processes, along with those new policies and procedures of how these will work, we will need better ways to gather, handle, and share the data that is required to tap into this Family First Prevention Services Act funding mechanism, right? So this feasibility study is outlined what that community-based pathways data system. So if you see that CBP data system, that's the tag that we use for the solution to handle those data capabilities. We looked at what the data system should do, what kind of options we have to implement the data system and what the best option might be, and then looked at a different plan and approach of how to make it happen, how to build that system out. So the overall approach of the feasibility study is made up of these three high-level phases. First, we went through and identified the needs, like what we would actually need this data system to do and provide. And in order to do that, we facilitated some input sessions with you all, with the community and tribal partner representatives. We also looked at the DCYF internal components, like their policies, goals, technology ecosystem of what might make sense, what they could implement. And then we documented that vision, the supporting goals, and the requirements for the data system to say, okay, this is where we want to go and what we need from a data system. The second phase was looking at, now that we know what we wanted, what the options we had were to try to achieve those goals, right? So we looked at the different potential technology solutions out in the out in the market. We looked at what peer states are doing, right, to try to implement solutions to tap into this FFPSA funding. We compared and evaluated the possible technology solutions and scored them to try to find the best option, and then we identified that top option for this data system. Last but not least, with all of that, for the best option, we did some estimation on resources, level of effort to build it out, some important milestones and tasks, project phases, and then built out a high-level project plan. So we'll be diving into each of those, the outcomes of each of those phases over the next couple of slides here. So first and foremost was recapping the participants that provided input and expertise into this process. So like I mentioned earlier, many of you participated or may have participated in the external feedback sessions that we hosted a few months ago. That list of representation is here from the community tribal partners. So we had a good amount of turnout and input to hearing what you all needed, what the concerns might be, what kind of considerations we needed to take into account, those types of things, right? In addition to the community and tribal partners, we also, you'll see across the bottom, included various folks across DCYF, subject matter expertise, peer states, and then other state organizations, partners, to try to feed in, paint the best possible picture of what we needed and how we can implement it. So recapping what we heard from those external feedback and input sessions, there was quite a bit of feedback, which was all very helpful to understand the landscape and considerations of what this would entail. You'll see them highlighted across the blue boxes here. So some of the key themes: work together with the tribes and community groups to make it easier to access the services, to reach more people. Be open and transparent with the providers and partners throughout the process of design and build. Incorporate those community goals into both the short-term and long-term planning, and be very clear, again, and transparent on how the data will be used, and get that informed consent from families. Privacy protection, the sharing information respectfully and securely, collecting only essential data, addressing family concerns about sharing personal data. Those are all the themes that we heard around the data sharing, and using a co-create rules process to reflect those community values and respect the consent. Those are the themes around that data protection concerns and security and privacy. Leveraging this to secure that longer term, more stable funding stream for the community tribal partners, right, through the Title IV-E FFPSA reimbursement. In designing with inclusivity, right, by involving tribal nations, local organizations, and families throughout the process, to make sure that we are incorporating those considerations and requirements throughout. And then supporting partners with limited tech access, especially in the rural and tribal areas, to try to improve some of their technical capabilities, like making that data, granting them access to their own data for reporting and analytics, accounting for those admin costs that are tied to data collection. We know everyone's functioning with limited resources, making sure that data in those systems are easy to use, so on and so forth, cutting down on the duplicate data entry across systems. So all of these themes that we heard from those external, affected parties, feedback sessions, and how we incorporated this into the feasibility study and across all of the different planning activities you'll see across the bottom. So some of the themes and goals and reasons for why this would be a good idea were incorporated into the vision, goals, and drivers. Some of the more tactical things about what we would need this data system to do, like, data de-identification and segregation and highly restricted access, and the types of data integration and exchanging and stuff, those are all in the requirements. And then last but not least, some of the things like co-creation, inclusive design process, when and where we would collaborate with the different groups, that's all incorporated in the implementation plan, the participants, the activities, and success factors, right? We want to make sure that what we deliver at the end of the day checks some of these boxes on these goals that we heard from you all. So that's at a high level what we heard and how we've incorporated it out throughout the feasibility study and the planning for this effort. One important note that we wanted to call out here, specifically on respecting tribal sovereignty and the data governance. So engagement is voluntary, right? That's going to be based on government-to-government consultation. Tribal nations may choose to participate in the community-based pathways as providers or not, right? That it's going to be a voluntary decision. System onboarding and reporting structures will reflect those distinct governance models. So again, this collaborative process of making sure that we're respecting and aligning to the different governance models and different rules and policies across the board. And the data ownership, consent, and the use will follow the tribal protocols. So again, want to make this co-creative process to make sure that we are adhering to all of those different items. The next piece here is getting into, the first thing that we used all of that feedback and all of our discovery to shape was the North Star of why we wanted this feasibility study, why we want this data system, and what we might want to accomplish with that. So that's listed here in the vision and objectives. The North Star vision statement, you'll see at the top banner, together with our community and tribal partners, again, collaborative process, we strengthen families by increasing access to preventative services via unified and flexible data system. So the key things here are using this data system to increased access, right? We know that these partner organizations, community and tribal partner organizations, are already in the communities providing these relevant services to families, and we are trying to use this technology and these capabilities to increase the reach, increase the access, more people served, more services offered, those types of things, right? So that's how we built the vision statement. And then some of the supporting objectives here on the bottom: expanding the reach and effectiveness of the upstream prevention services, ensuring the compliance with federal funding requirements, right? That's a more tactical thing that we'll need to tap into that FFPSA funding, strengthening the relationships with the community partners, right, between DCYF and the community and tribal partners that are providing these services. And last but definitely not least is deepening the trust with the communities that we serve, right? The families and children and folks at the end of the receiving end of these services, increasing that trust and relationship. So again, all of these painting the picture of why we're doing this and how we're going to measure the success, right? If we, at the end of the day, the solution that's implemented, we wanted to check these boxes of saying that it's helping progress towards each of these objectives. The next piece is, what we want the system to be able to do, at least in this initial build and release of the data system. And that's referred to as scope, right? What is in scope? What we want the system to do versus what we want the system to not do at this point. So the system for this initial, plan is to focus on the data that we'll need to tap into this FFPSA or Title 4E funding reimbursement mechanism, right? So we're going to focus on securely collecting and providing data while also protecting the individual identities, and using that, collecting that data through the various mechanisms or technology of our partners, right? Whether it's a direct entry or an interface or a file transfer, we want to implement in interface and collect the data with where the partners are now from a technology perspective. It will collect the data, minimum data needed on service eligibility, service plans, the referrals, and some of the financial aspects of invoices that'll be needed to just make the reimbursement mechanisms work. It will allow community and tribal partners access to their own data, right? So you can do your reporting and some of your analytics and things like that. We heard that as a pain point, as a requested feature from the data system from those feedback sessions. It will keep all the data separate from child welfare. So this is a critical piece of the segregation of the data from all of the child welfare data. It will be in its own database, secured, highly restricted, and separate. So what the system won't do at this point is, there was some discussion or requests around nice to have functionality around more full end-to-end case management or service provider management or automated invoicing, and that is just not in scope at this moment for this initial release, right? We want to focus on standing up these procedures and policies and a data exchange that we need for the 4A funding first. But we could, we're looking to build it in a way that could be expanded and matured and evolved over time. So those things may be in the future. Sorry, I've got my daughter here. Good job. Nice job. Some of the key priorities that we heard, just to reinforce through this process as we started to design and plan for the system. An inclusive design process, right? Include community and tribal representatives throughout the design and testing process. to ensure that it meets the needs of your organizations and the communities you serve. Data security around storing all that community-based pathway data separate, keeping it anonymous and highly restricting that data, and then an informed consent process, right? This goes back to the voluntary process to participate in this. Developing an informed consent process that tells all participants exactly what data is being collected, why it's being collected, and what is being done with it, how it's being used, and then giving the participants that option to choose whether they want to participate, opt in or not, and opt out. So again, some of the big themes that we heard from those feedback sessions. Now, as we looked at the data system, we talked about what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish, how we might want to build it. The next piece is, why? What are the benefits that this data system could bring? All right, because we know that it's going to involve significant amount of resources, effort, on both sides, on the DCYF side, on the community partner side, to get this up and running. There's going to be some overhead with getting, our participants, our families and stuff on board. So what are the benefits? So on the internal side, as DCYF invests more time and effort in community-based pathways, we want to build a standardized, easy to use, flexible business processes that allow us, DCYF, to serve more people, to eventually scale and grow the community-based pathways, more partners, more service types, more regions, those types of things, right? In doing that, increase the reach of those upstream services through the community partners that are already offering these services to prevent child welfare involvement. DCYF is also operating with limited resources, right? So building out these technical capabilities will help alleviate some of the internal capacity constraints and allow for the expansion of those programs, doing less with more, or doing more with less. And the last but not least piece is eventually in the future, allowing the capability to do some of the more qualitative evaluation of programs and services, right? So on both sides, on DCYF side and on the community and tribal partner side, you're investing in some of these service providers and these services and these programs. And it would be great to understand how, not only like how many programs you're doing, but how well those programs are working, how effective they are, how the participants and the families and children feel about how well those services are going, so you can invest and focus more on the things that are working and maybe identify the things that are not working so well, right? So doing more of that kind of qualitative analysis. On the external side, on the community partner and tribal partner side, the biggest thing, which is a shared goal really, is improving the support and resources to keep family and children healthy, connected, and stable, right? That's really the end goal of why all of these programs and why these processes and services exist. In addition to that, strengthening the relationships with community-based partners and tribal partners between DCYF and these partner groups, helping to build the community trust by demonstrating a proactive, family-centered approach, providing the community and tribal partners with a sustainable long-term funding stream through Title IV reimbursement, right? We know that some of the partners have to piece together their funding on a regular basis through different sources, and having a more stable funding stream helps, just expand your reach and your ability, your resource pool. And last but not least is improving some of the operations for the community partners and tribal partners with limited access to technology and infrastructure, right? We're providing a solution. It allows the partners to have some technical capabilities without having to invest in their own solutions for those things, right? So there's mutual benefit there. So just to recap, what is in it for you as partners or external partners, parties in this group? We want to help increase the funding, enabling a wider reach of your programs and your services, more services for more people. We want to help through this data system introduce some operational efficiencies, right? So that you can automate and standardize and modernize some of the processes and tools that you use to administer these programs and services. Give you all access to data and analytics that you may or may not have at this point, right? Being able to see all your data in one place, run reports and analyze it for you and your team. and then implement security and anonymity, right? The data collected will be de-identified and segregated from child welfare, and participants will remain anonymous, right? We're not collecting um, and storing and sharing any of that PII data or that personally identifiable data. All right, so those are the outcomes of the feasibility study. Where we are and what you can expect next is that, like we mentioned in the beginning of the call, we will post all of the feasibility study documentation and outcomes on the public-facing website for you and your groups and partners to access. DCYF is going to be working through all of the logistics around the details around planning, getting the funding, getting the various approvals that will be needed to actually implement and um, get a more concrete kind of project timeline of who, what, when, and where together. And then once all of that is established and more set in stone, then there will be another information session on all of those aspects of timeline, project phases, collaboration opportunities, etc. So that is really the content that we wanted to share with you all. Again, just recap, the process, the approach, what we heard from the external groups, how we incorporated throughout some of the key outcomes. And so we do have some time for questions. You can pop things in the chat. You can raise your hand or just come off mute, but be happy to field some questions at this point. All right. Well, I know that we just, oh, go ahead, Lark.
Yeah, just to make sure I'm following along. It sounds to me like you haven't identified yet the system. You're just kind of gathering input from community and tribes to say like what would need to be factored in as you're then making your consideration related to whatever technology or platform you're looking at. Is that kind of
Yeah, we have, based on a couple of factors, we didn't get into all of the technical analysis in this presentation, obviously, but we have identified like the top kind of platform or solution based on some of the other things within DCYF's ecosystem that would be um, the best fit, proposed best fit for it, but there still are discussions happening on the DCYF side around which solution or platform would be the best. Yeah, so that hasn't been set in stone at this point.
okay? Thank you.
Aaron, yes, there was a slide at the beginning, here we go, around the different participation that we had in those external feedback sessions. So you can see here a list of 20 to 30-ish. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? We know it's a lot of information, so no pressure to to respond at this moment. Again, you'll have some time to review the different content. Okay. Then I just want to say thank you all for all your participation, not only in attending today's session to hear more about the feasibility study and the data system, but also in those early feedback sessions. All of that feedback was highly valuable to us and how we shaped all the different aspects of the study and the planning for this. So hopefully you all feel like your voices were heard, but we really took all of that input to heart and tried to incorporate it throughout. So thank you all for your effort in the planning phases and any future effort that you provide as we start to embark on this journey. But with that, I will pass it back to Phyllis or Maria. I don't know if you wanted to close.
I just wanted to say thank you as well to Gartner, to everybody who was able to participate, whether that was virtually in person or if that was in comments after or during the process. We really do appreciate your time, because it does take time to weigh in and provide input. And this is such a valuable tool for this work, and to the community and the providers who will be participating. So we couldn't do it without you. So we're glad that you're here. Again, whether that was in writing, virtually, we thank you. Maria?
Just would echo, and please know that we plan on maintaining the email distribution list that went out for this calendar invite, and we hope to continue to expand our community partners. So if you have fellow colleagues that you want to be informed of this work, we will continue to expand that list as we move forward. So thank you all.
We also need to thank Francisca's daughter for her guest appearances.
Yes.
We're a
Many guest
family-friendly
appearances.
group here.
Absolutely.
Wanted to quickly ask, with federal funds and everything changing, nothing is affecting this plan at this point, or is it a wait and see? Just for clarification.
Yeah, I'll say related to this body of work, this was not dependent on any federal funding to lift it up. We are navigating ongoing conversations with ACF, but Family First Prevention Services, Title IV-E prevention, like dollars, have not been impacted to our knowledge up until this point. Thank you for the question.
All right. With that, again, we thank you, and we'll look for more information on our external site under community-based pathways and Family First.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.